CertainTeed manufactures two types of craft-faced insulation: Speedy R, which can be friction fitted into the wall cavity, and tabbed insulation, which is stapled. This experienced installer is working with Speedy R. Begin by placing the insulation in the stud cavities. This will make the insulation more accessible, making the job quicker. Firmly place the bat in the top of the wall cavity, making sure it's flush to the top with no gap. Then, place it gently into the cavity, making sure not to compress the insulation. Tug at the bottom of the bat to smooth out the facing, and be sure there's no gap. Occasionally, bats may be a bit too long or too short to fit the cavity. In these cases, cut longer bats to fit, or use a short piece to add to the length. Make sure the bat fits snugly in the cavity. You don't want any gaps. Every gap causes heat loss and increases heating and cooling costs. If you're using faced insulation with tabs, you'll need to staple the tabs to the studs. There are two ways to staple: inset or face stapling. For inset stapling, the tabs fold into the cavity. To install bats by face stapling, overlap the tabs. Staple at least every 8 inches or so. For the most part, bats will fit neatly between the studs, but you may find some areas that are narrower or uneven. Cut the bat to fit. It's a good idea to leave a tab on one side if you can. Note the small guidelines to help you cut straight. Most experienced installers cut against the stud, but you might find it easier to measure and cut on the floor, with the facing down. Never cut against finished flooring. For wiring, you can split the insulation and push half behind the wire, or you can cut a slit to fit around it. For plumbing, you must run the insulation behind the pipes to keep them from freezing. Be sure to insulate behind every pipe located on outside walls. Cut out around electrical boxes and stuff the piece behind the box. Insulate behind air ducts if there's space, and stuff insulation around them on the sides and the bottom where they come into the wall. Cut pieces to fit and fill any remaining cavities. When you finish a room, look around for any tears in the vapor retarder facing and secure them with duct tape. Installing unfaced bats is basically the same as installing faced bats, but where it's required, you'll install a separate vapor retarder, such as CertainTeed's membrane, over the insulation when it's complete. As always, carefully install the insulation to make sure it completely fills the cavity. If necessary, it's okay to compress behind pipes and ducts, especially if space is tight. Notice that unfaced insulation has the R value printed on one side. Make sure these markings face the inside of the room, so an inspector will know if the proper insulation has been installed. When working with metal studs, there are two ways to insulate. On interior walls, special friction-fit unfaced bats are used. These bats are slightly wider and longer, so they pressure fit in the sidewall cavity. In exterior walls that require a vapor retarder, craft-faced bats may be used, or you can use unfaced with membrane. Check with your supervisor. You've seen how to handle heated sidewall applications. Now let's look at insulating unheated areas. These include ceilings of unheated garages or places under the heated areas of a house. To begin, air seal and insulate the band joist. Keep the facing up toward the heated part of the house and in contact with the floor above. These engineered wood joists are designed to hold bats without additional support, so no bracing is necessary. In some applications, you may be required to use wire braces to hold the insulation in place. When you come to pipes, ducts, or cross bracing, be sure to continue the insulation around them. Split the insulation when you come to wiring. It's important to be thorough and complete. When you're finished, go through and check that there are no gaps or exposed penetrations. Next, we'll look at installing bat insulation in attics and cathedral ceilings.